Good morning and welcome to another Green Beauty Theory monthly update. What is Green Beauty Theory? Well, it's a place where common sense individuals can gather and have discussions about new, exciting, controversial, progressive ideas in green, clean beauty. So I grew up in Hawaii and I currently live on the island of Maui. And so I thought one of the interesting topics for us to discuss, and I hope you'll join us in your thoughts below in the comments. But I thought one of the interesting things for us to discuss would be, why did Hawaii ban some particular sunscreen ingredients from being sold here? We live really close to the equator. We have sunshine 90% of the time. Why would we ban sunscreen ingredients? Well, let's talk about that, okay? And as we celebrate here on Green Beauty Theory that there are nuance to these discussions, I thought it would be interesting for me to bring my perspective of somebody who has grown up around some of these sites that they are saying are most impacted and harmed by these ingredients, as someone who has interacted with tourists almost every day of my life, who has seen some of the destruction sometimes by people who, this is just a vacation spot for them. This isn't their home. So yeah, I thought let's have a robust discussion. Now, in the spirit of the new paradigm we find ourselves in, where Instagram experts and YouTube experts no longer think that unless I'm a cosmetic chemist or a marine biologist, that I should be reading studies and talking to you about them, I won't. Because I don't need to just pick a study and read it to you. I can rely on a governmental agency, a scientific governmental agency that we'll get into, to interpret the data for me. And I can base my opinion on what they say, okay? So let's jump in. All right, first let's start with the CDC, because the CDC will define for us one of these chemicals called oxybenzone. And let me backtrack just a little bit there, because in 2018, Hawaii passed a bill that would go into effect January 1st, 2021, that said you could no longer sell products here that contain oxybenzone or oxytinoxate. So what is oxybenzone? We can't really go into both chemicals, like, again, for just the sake of time. We got to keep moving forward, because I'm sure I could talk for an hour, but I'm not sure you would hang out for an hour. So let's jump in. So oxybenzone is a naturally occurring chemical found in some flowering plants. It absorbs and scatters the sun's harmful ultraviolet rays, and for this reason, it is produced for use as sunscreen in lotions, conditioners, and cosmetics. It is also used in plastic products to block and prevent UV rays from altering the plastic and the contents inside. So it's used in a lot of sunscreens. In 2018, there were over 600 products that contained oxybenzone. Now, over the course of this video, I will talk to you about some of my opinions, my insights, my observations as a human person that lives here, and we'll talk about some science. But again, I'm not going to rely on myself. I'm going to allow the experts to discuss it. So, let's talk a little bit about what the Hawaii bill said, okay? And I'm going to read it. It is a little bit longer, but I feel like it's important because it really lays the groundwork for the discussion. So it says, the legislature finds that two chemicals contained in many sunscreens, oxybenzone and oxytinoxate, have significant harmful impacts on Hawaii's marine environment and residing ecosystems, including coral reefs that protect Hawaii's shorelines. Oxybenzone and oxytinoxate cause mortality in developing coral, increase coral bleaching that indicates extreme stress, even at temperatures below 87.8 degrees Fahrenheit, and cause genetic damage to coral and other marine organisms. These chemicals have also been shown to degrade corals' resiliency and ability to adjust to climate change factors and inhibit recruitment of new corals. Furthermore, oxybenzone and oxygen oxide appear to increase the probability of endocrine disruption. Scientific studies show that both chemicals can induce feminization in adult male fish and increase reproductive disease in marine invertebrate species like sea urchin, vertebrate species like fish, wrasses, eels, and parrotfish, and mammals like the Hawaiian monk seal that's on the endangered species list. The chemicals also induce deformities in the embryonic development of fish, sea urchins, coral, shrimp, and induce neurological behavior changes in fish that threaten the continuity of fish populations. In addition, species that are listed on the Federal Endangered Species Act and inhabit Hawaii's waters, including sea turtles, dolphins, marine mammals, and migratory birds, may be exposed to these chemicals. The legislature further finds that the environmental contamination of these chemicals persists in Hawaii's coastal waters as the contamination is constantly refreshed and renewed every day by swimmers and beachgoers. The legislature additionally finds that elevated levels of these chemicals have been detected at popular swimming beaches and critical coral reef areas throughout the state, including Waimea Bay, ding, Hanauma Bay, ding, both of those are on Oahu, Waikiki Beach, and Honolulu Bay, ding, and Ahihi-Kinau Natural Area Reserve on Maui. This is the one that I live about 15 minutes away from. I thought I would show you just how beautiful it is. Let's talk about where we're going to bounce our ideas off of. And so I have a couple things in the sources below. I have a full informational review from an article from the International Journal of Women's Dermatology, and it's a free full text article on PubMed. It's excellent. It's going to link you to every study anybody mentions, okay? It has everything. It is awesome, and it's a very common sense. It really, talks about things from the perspective that I am saying, okay? There's a lot here. It's not just coral bleaching like everyone wants to fixate on. So I'm going to link that below. So please go check that out if you really want to understand and investigate this topic. But then let me introduce where I'm going to be referencing for a lot of how we should interpret this conversation. Let's go to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA. We know a lot about NOAA here because let me tell you some of the services that fall under NOAA that impact the people who live in Hawaii's life every day. The National Weather Service, so they're qualified to tell me if a hurricane's coming. The National Ocean Service, they're qualified to tell me if there's a tsunami coming. National Environmental Satellite Data and Information Service, National Marine Fisheries Service, the Office of Oceanic and Atmospheric Research. You mean they're the governmental agency that does oceanic research? Well, I feel like we've found a scientific source, don't you? I feel like we've found experts to interpret the information for us, and I feel like we can, make a sound decision based on what they tell us. Those are going to be our sources, right? We're going to be referencing the International Journal of Women's Dermatology that did a survey of this entire topic, and we're going to be referencing NOAA, okay? So what are we working with here? We're working with coral bleaching, okay? And we're working with endocrine disruption. See, that's the part that no one ever really wants to talk about. Is a huge part of this is endocrine disruption, okay? And the fact that it's It's really affecting the ecosystems. Now, coral bleaching. We know from looking at NOAA, we can see that it's not just skincare ingredients like sunscreen ingredients, okay? You can go on there and look. We know it's contributing, and it's contributing in more than just people wearing sunscreen and going swimming. It's also coming from wastewater. It's also not biodegrading, so it's bioaccumulating. So it has this effect where it's building up. So we know we can just straight up say, for all the haters who want to say that coral bleaching isn't just being caused by these sunscreen ingredients, that's fully acknowledged. However, it's significantly contributing, and that's not me saying that. That's not me reading a study and telling you that. It's NOAA telling us that. It says, in a 2016 study, a team of international scientists found that a common chemical in many sunscreen lotions and cosmetics is highly toxic to juvenile corals and other marine life. Oxybenzone is found in more than 3,500 skincare products worldwide for protection against the sun's harmful effects. The compound has been found entering the environment both through wastewater and directly from swimmers wearing sunscreen. This showed 4 major toxic effects in early developing coral: increased susceptibility to bleaching, meaning again, it's not just the sunscreen ingredient, but it's contributing. DNA damage, abnormal skeleton growth, aka endocrine disruption, and gross deformities of baby coral. Now, the interesting thing that you find here, right, with NOAA is they are actually working with another national organization. This is the National Agencies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. And you know what? Right here on their thing, they say concerns have been raised about the potential toxicity of sunscreens, so we're going to study it. We're going to review the science, we're going to meet with experts, and we're going to talk about it. Did you know they have a meeting coming up February 23rd, 2021, and then another meeting March 3rd, 2021? So if someone gives you the opinion that the science is settled on this topic, they're just straight up lying. Because the science isn't settled. The National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine are not meeting about this topic because it's just nothing, okay? NOAA doesn't have it on their website that sunscreen chemicals are harming our marine environment because somebody read a study wrong, all right? So anyway, let's keep going because we can establish through NOAA that coral bleaching and coral stress is occurring, right? Then we can move on to endocrine disruption because this is the big thing. Because not only is it affecting the fish and the marine life and accumulating in their tissues, flash my little NOAA infograph right here, it's also being absorbed by the people that swim in it. Chemical sunscreens were found to absorb really well into the bloodstream and stay there. And you can absorb it in your skin from just swimming in the water. So I was talking about this video with my husband and I said, do you remember that time we went snorkeling in Honolulu Bay? We hardly ever go up there because it's so far away. And he's like, yeah. And I was like, do you remember how there was so much sunscreen on the surface of the water that like when you came up, you got it on your skin and the whole water just reeked of sunscreen? And he was like, yeah. And I'm like, that's what they're talking about. So the other thing that I kind of want to point out that I want to talk about, if you take a look at some of this video right here, these areas are a protected sort of environmental anomaly, all right, that develop coral like this. So if you look at Hanauma Bay, it's shaped like a U, right? And you don't have a lot of water going in and out of there. And you don't have a lot of wind impacting that area. And that's why corals develop there, okay? If you look at the south side of Molokai, this side over here faces the wind and has these big cliffs. But on this side, it's all protected from the wind, and that's where these beautiful coral reefs form. It's the same thing with, we call it La Perouse down here in Maui, is this natural area reserve. Is you have this area, this little inlet, where you don't have wind impacting that area like you do on the rest of Maui, okay? And so when sunscreen is sitting in those waters, it's not constantly being moved either. So it is kind of creating this like bath area where the water is not going in and out. So it's even more like, that's one of the things that I wanted to say about living here and observing this. I grew up going to Hanauma Bay on Oahu. I live 15 minutes from La Perouse. I've been there a million times with my kids. And I want to tell you, as somebody who lives here, these areas, they're not getting that constant water exchange. So there's not the dilution that maybe you would be thinking about with wastewater or out in the natural area. And so I'm going to link NOAA's article. I'm going to link all my sources for NOAA that you can read up on. And I'm going to link to the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, and I'm going to link to that article. All of that's going to be below in the description box. But this is, you know, again, what I want to talk about is saying that, okay, so now let's be the devil's advocate, right? And we're talking about skin cancer. And skin cancer is really serious and it's really deadly. My father has had 2 bouts of metastatic melanoma. And so it's not lost on me that we need to wear sunscreen, but as somebody who has lived here my entire life, you cannot rely on sunscreen just to protect you from burning or protect you from the sun. If you come here and you went to the beach with my parents, you know what they would do? The first thing that my dad does is he sets up his umbrella. He gets out his hat, they put on their rash guards. Sun protection isn't a joke here. You watch the lifeguards, they go ahead and put on their rash guards. They're wearing hats. Like, we have a different way of approaching the sun. My kids and I, we don't do a lot of beach time between 10 and 2. We just don't. Because they have very white skin, and I'm not going to take them out and try to fight the sun. I would rather utilize the sun in a way that's really healthy and safe. So this conversation where they stand in the corner, they stomp their foot and say skin cancer, I just look at them and I'm like, this is just so ridiculous, because there are so many other ways to protect yourself from the sun. Maybe if you have a high risk factor for skin cancer in your family, don't come on vacation to Hawaii. Just don't. Go visit someplace beautiful like Iceland where there's not as much sun. Anyway, all right, that's it for this video. Again, you know, one of my new focuses is going to be not try to interpret the study, not pulling up the surveys, but rather letting the actual experts, the actual body of experts decide for us, which, you know, we have with NOAA. So all that'll be linked below, and thanks for watching. Bye.